Sometimes the most incredible stories aren't in history books. They're tucked away in government documents that were never, ever supposed to see the light of day. Today, we're going to crack open two declassified CIA cables from the very same month, and believe me, they tell one heck of a story about one of America's most famous investigations.
Okay, so this is where it all starts. Look at this thing. The first thing that just pops right off the page is that big stamp at the top. Secret. This isn't some memo. This is an internal communication from the CIA station down in Guayaquil, Ecuador, and it's from May 1978. It's just one little piece of a giant puzzle. So you're probably wondering, how are we even seeing a secret cable right now? Well, there's only one reason: the JFK Assassination Records Act. It was a law passed back in '92 that basically forced government agencies to open up their files on the Kennedy assassination. And these documents, they're a direct result of that law finally kicking in.
And that brings us to what these cables are really about. They're about a huge, globe-trotting congressional investigation that was really stirring the pot back in the late 1970s. The main character in our story is the HSCA, the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Now, this was a seriously powerful committee. Congress gave them a massive job: go back and reinvestigate the assassinations of both JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. and try to get some real final answers. And when I say their investigation was massive, I mean it. These guys followed leads absolutely anywhere they took them. And just these two cables, from a single month, show us they had people everywhere, from Guayaquil, Ecuador, all the way to Brussels, Belgium. All right, so let's zoom in on that first cable. What on earth was going on in Ecuador that got the CIA's attention? Now, looking at the details here, you might expect to see some coded language or spycraft. But no, this cable is surprisingly straightforward. It's about two American officials who have just touched down in the country. And it names them right there in the open: Gaydon Fonzi and Albert Gonzalez. These weren't spies or anything like that. They were investigators for the House Select Committee. They were literally Congress's boots on the ground. But here's where it gets weird. This CIA station, the guys who are supposed to know what's happening in their own territory, admit right here in the cable that they have no clue why these investigators are in town. The whole purpose of their visit? A total mystery. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What possible lead in the JFK investigation could have dragged two congressional staffers all the way down to Ecuador? Okay, now let's jump across the Atlantic, because at the exact same time Fonzi and Gonzalez are in Ecuador, the HSCA is also poking around in Brussels. And that's where our second cable enters the picture. Here it is, cable number 2, also from May 1978, but this one's coming out of the CIA station in Brussels. And it points to a completely different, but just as fascinating line of questioning that the committee was chasing down. The subject line tells you everything: Vlaamse Militants Order, or VMO. This was a well-known Flemish nationalist paramilitary group in Belgium. So for some reason, the HSCA thought this group might have some connection to their case. So let's recap. We've got two teams of investigators in two totally different parts of the world during the same month. But the real story, the critical part, is how the CIA reacted to them in each case. And trust me, this is where it gets good. So let's just put them side by side. On the left, we've got Ecuador. On the right, Belgium. We're talking about the exact same congressional committee. But what these cables show are two wildly different attitudes from the CIA. And boom, here's the contrast in black and white. In Ecuador, the CIA is just kind of passive. They're just like, yeah, we expect them to contact us. But in Brussels, oh, it's a completely different tune. They are opposed to the passage of articles to said committee. In plain English, they're actively trying to block Congress from seeing their intel. So what's the big takeaway here? This isn't just about paperwork. It shows this deep, underlying tension between Congress trying to get answers and the CIA trying to control the information. In one place, they're just watching. In the other, they're putting up a brick wall. And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why was the CIA so hands-off, so neutral about the investigation in Ecuador, but so actively obstructive about the one in Belgium? What was in those files on that Belgian group that they were so determined to keep Congress from seeing? At the end of the day, these cables don't solve the Kennedy assassination, but they reveal something else, something just as important. They give us a rare peek behind the curtain at the incredible struggle the HSCA was up against. Their job wasn't just to find clues, it was to pry those clues out of the hands of an agency that's literally built on keeping secrets. And that just leaves you with one last thought. I mean, these are just two little documents from one single month of a multi-year investigation. If they can reveal this much drama and tension, it just makes you wonder what other stories are still sitting out there in the archives, just waiting to be told.